Well, good morning to you, and many thanks to the elders for inviting me to share with you this morning. It's always good to be with the community church. I love the church family, I love our friendship and our joining together, and so it's a real privilege to be sharing with you this morning. I've really been enjoying John's Gospel recently, and especially the last few chapters. And I'd like to read to you from John chapter 20, verses 19 to 29, and then just share a few things from it. John 20, verse 19. It says, "In the evening of that first day of the week, the disciples were gathered together with the doors locked because of their fear of the Jews. And then Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, 'Peace to you.' And having said this, he showed them his hands and his side. So the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. And Jesus said to them again, 'Peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you.' And after saying this, he breathed on them and said, 'Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained.' But one of the 12, Thomas, called Twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples kept telling him, 'We've seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'If I don't see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my fingers into the mark of the nails and put my hand into his side, I will never believe.' And then after 8 days, his disciples were indoors again, and Thomas was with them. And even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, 'Peace to you.' And then he said to Thomas, 'Put your finger here and observe my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Don't be an unbeliever, but a believer.' And Thomas responded to him, 'My Lord and my God.' And Jesus said, 'Because you've seen me, you've believed. Those who believe without seeing are blessed.'" It's a fantastic story, and I want to highlight 4 things in this story that happened that day, that Jesus did for them that day, that he still does for us today, and I believe he particularly wants to do for us in this season that we're in, that we've been in, and that we're going into. The first is this: he came to them. Verses 19 and 20 say that in the evening of that first day of the week, the disciples were gathered together with the doors locked because of their fear of the Jews, and then Jesus came. Jesus came, and he stood among them. And he said to them, 'Peace to you.' And having said this, he showed them his hands and his side. So the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. This story takes place in a locked room on the Sunday evening, 2 days after the crucifixion. And the remaining disciples are shut away because of their fear of further action by the Jewish authorities. There was a real sense of crisis, of turmoil, a climate of fear and uncertainty, of not knowing what might happen. So they're locked in to stay as safe as they can. Many of us have known something of what that must have felt like, to be locked away, to be kept safe, in different circumstances, of course. But Jesus comes amongst them. The fact that they're locked in makes absolutely no difference to him, because he can be with us wherever we are. He's not limited in any way by closed doors or by locked doors or by small rooms, and he's not absent when we face challenging times. And his power is not diminished in any way when we gather in our homes or in small groups instead of all together. Jesus comes amongst them, and his presence immediately brings 2 things that they need most that evening at the end of what must have seemed a truly devastating weekend. First, as he comes amongst them, he comes with peace. They're so often his first words, aren't they? Because so often it's the first thing we need. And that word peace, eirene, is much more than a greeting or a salutation. It means quietness and rest and peace of mind and wholeness. It has the sense of when all the essential parts are joined together in harmony. And I want to say to you this morning, Southport, whoever you are, whatever you're facing, he wants you to know his peace. In times of turmoil, when we face challenges, difficulties, uncertainties, he comes with peace. He has the ability, it passes our understanding, it's beyond our understanding, but he has the ability to join all the parts together and bring us into wholeness and harmony and peace of mind. And I believe today he wants to speak peace into your situation. And then also he comes secondly with proof, shows them his hands, shows them his sides. Because, whenever Jesus is present, it's proof that he's alive. It's proof that he's conquered sin and defeated death. It's proof for us today that he sits at the Father's right hand and he's poured out his Spirit. And he wants us to know that he's alive. The beginning of Acts chapter 1 verse 3 says that Jesus gave many convincing proofs that he was alive, because he wants us to know. And he wants us to know that because he's alive, because he's present, anything can happen. Anything is possible. And that where 2 or 3 people are gathered, he's present. And therefore there's an invitation to believe that all things are possible. I don't know what your plans are, what your situation will be, but it's likely that we will be meeting far more frequently from house to house in small groups in these next few weeks. But in those situations, we can know the thrill of anticipating his presence with us as we do so, wherever and whenever we're gathered, and knowing that all things are possible. So he comes to them with peace and with proof, and I pray that would be your experience at this time, and mine too, that we would experience those things as he comes amongst us, and be excited by all those proofs that he is alive. The second thing he does for them on that evening, that he does for us at this time, wants to do amongst us at this time, is to send them. Verse 21, Jesus said to them again, "Peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you." And in the midst of this gathering behind closed doors comes a vision, a foretaste of something so much bigger. Here are 10 men wondering what could possibly happen next, and suddenly they're brought out of their fear, they're brought out of their uncertainty and filled with peace, with wholeness, with harmony, and then given a commission that is mind-blowing. Listen to those words again. As the Father has sent me, I also send you. Now, John's Gospel records many times that Jesus talks about being sent by his Father, and the word is apostello, to send forth, to send as a messenger with a commission, with a really strong emphasis between the one who's sending and the one who's sent, so that the one who's sent represents the one who's sending, goes as if they were present themselves. Jesus' life and ministry was framed within a context of a deep understanding that he had been sent by his Father on a commission to do something particular. And now in just the same way, he's commissioning them to continue all that he started. He's passing on the baton. He's lifting them up out of their locked-in situation, and he's directing them to sign up to a mission that will take them way beyond that room, that house, that city, that nation that they're now in. Listen to those 10 words again, and hear God's love for the world. Hear the urgency of the task. Put your own name at the end of these 10 words and decide what you will do. As the Father sent me, so also I send you, David. This season that we've been in and the one that we're coming into will be really defining for the church in our time. How do we see ourselves? What is our focus? Do we care what's happening in the world? What matters most to us? Will we break out of our buildings? Will we be restricted by our surroundings? Will we move with urgency? Will we be held back by fear? Will we find ever more fantastic creative ways of communicating our good news? As the Father sent me, so I send you. How did the Father send Jesus? How did Jesus come? Well, without many of the things that we think sometimes matter so much, but with a commission, with authority, with simplicity, with power, full of grace and truth, filled with love and compassion, with healing and wholeness. That's how Jesus came. And now he sends us in just the same way. God loved the world so much, he sent his only Son. The Son loves the world so much that he sent the Spirit, and the Spirit and the Father and the Son loved the world so much that they send the church into the world. In the middle of this locked room with crisis and turmoil on the outside and with fear and uncertainty on the inside, Jesus comes with peace, with proof, and he commissions his followers to make disciples of all nations. In other words, he looks above and beyond their present situation and he commissions them for something so much bigger. I believe that's what he wants to do amongst us today. This is a defining moment. Let's ensure our churches are not defined as people just surviving in the world, not defined as those trying to stay spiritual in secular surroundings, not defined as those who are scathing and cynical about the world, but let's be defined as those who know we're sent into the world with authority, with power, with grace and truth, with love and compassion to continue all that he started. We're part of a sent people, an apostolic people, reaching our world, seeing his body get stronger, preparing a bride together, fulfilling our calling together. And the greatest thing we could do right now is to decide that with all our heart and soul and mind and strength, we will love God, love our neighbours, love our world, and love our Great Commission, and respond as Isaiah did. Here I am, Lord, send me. The third thing that Jesus does that day is he breathes on them. After saying this, verse 22 says he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. It's a really strange picture, isn't it? But breath is the defining sign of life. When God made the man in the beginning, it says he formed the man out of the dust from the ground and he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils and the man became a living being. When God needed an army, he commanded the prophet to prophesy breath into those dry bones, and the breath entered them and they came to life. And now when Jesus needs his church to take up their call and commission and embrace their sending, he breathes the life of his Spirit into us. He'll never send us without breathing his life into us. But if he's breathed his life into you, and he has, then you and I must know it's so he can send us with all that we need. Jesus breathed his life into them and he breathes his life into us so that we can breathe it out as we go into all our worlds. The Holy Spirit clothes us with power. The baptism in the Spirit is to make us witnesses. Jesus puts his breath into us and gives us his Spirit so that we can breathe out or exhale life and hope and peace. In every conversation, in every communication, in every interaction we have, we're carriers of his life, living, breathing testimonies of his resurrection life and power. And in a world of so much negativity and unkindness and cynicism, let's make it our aim to exhale life, hope, peace to everyone we meet. That terrible, tragic cry, I can't breathe, will become iconic of this time of crisis and this day of definition for the church, because it resonates on so many levels. It encapsulates a cry of help from those being strangled through racial injustice, by those swamped by their needs, those feeling suffocated by their problems and challenges, those drowning in their pain and gasping for breath, and for all those who are spiritually dead or dying, desperate for the fresh air of peace with God. I can't breathe. I need air. I need space. I can't make sense of things. I feel trapped. Church, we have to hear their cry. Can they find life with us? Can they come into our peace? Can they find proof of Jesus amongst us? Are we living filled with the life-giving breath of God? What are we exhaling? What are we breathing out? Jesus came to them and he sent them and he breathed his life into them. And then he came back for one of them. Verse 26 says, after 8 days his disciples were indoors again and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood amongst them and he said, peace to you. And then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and observe my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Don't be an unbeliever but a believer. Thomas responded to him, my Lord and my God. This second incident is almost identical to the first part of the story. It's almost a repetition. Jesus comes again into the locked room with a message of peace to prove he's alive. But this time he comes just for Thomas, who for some reason wasn't there last time. He comes back with peace. He comes back with proof just for Thomas. Thomas wasn't the most prominent of the 12. He's not at the forefront of the action. He's not a Peter, James or a John. He didn't write a gospel or an epistle like Matthew or John or Peter, but he was there all the time and he'd been with Jesus 3 years and he loved him sincerely and he certainly wanted to follow him faithfully. And he was devastated by his death and he needed to know for himself that Jesus really was alive. And Thomas wasn't a pushover. He wasn't a man without his own convictions. And Jesus is okay with that. He knows Thomas is struggling. He knows he has doubts. He doesn't berate him for lack of faith. He simply gives him what he knows he needs and longs for: proof and peace. Why? Because Jesus didn't want this man to be left behind. He didn't want him to be held back because of his earlier absence. Because he wanted Thomas to know that he cared for him, that he believed in him, that he had an assignment for him. The Good Shepherd comes back for a good man because he wants him to take up the commission and fulfill the destiny he's planned for him. And as a result of Jesus' care and concern for this one man, Thomas is at the heart of the action in John 21, if you read that. He gets to see the miraculous catch of fish, and it's the Apostle Thomas who will go on to carry the gospel to India. Jesus came back so that Thomas will know without any doubt that Jesus is alive, that he cares for him personally and individually, and that Thomas will carry those deep convictions to India and set a nation and a continent ablaze. Now, maybe you have some doubts, or maybe you've got friends who tell you Jesus is alive, but you need your own proof. Do you know that's okay? Jesus will meet you where you're at. He's heard your prayers. He will help you to take the next step of your faith. I believe he'll show you the amazing plan he has for your life. Or maybe you've been absent from the things of God for some time. Maybe you feel you've missed the moment and you've seen others running ahead and know that it's time to catch up and get involved again. Jesus is here for you today. It may be time to recommit. Put your life back on track with him. But I do believe that in these defining days, it's time to come back and to look Jesus in the eye and to respond like Thomas, my Lord and my God. So in that room, Jesus came to them and sent them and breathed resurrection life into them, and then came back to ensure they were all included. I believe that's his heart and his burden for you and for us today. This season that we've been in is coming to an end. The next season will soon be upon us. These are and will be defining times. And for you, Community Church, I pray that God will presence himself amongst you, fill you with his peace and his proof, breathe his life into you and send you out. And may there be much resulting fruit amongst you in these days of great opportunity and great harvest. May God bless you richly. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you this morning. Amen.